now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ban.
on Spoiled Rotten, and we are here with James Green. Thank you very much for joining us again. You can talk. I don't ever really know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
but
listen,
yeah,
I'm just trained not to talk over other people.
No,
so
no.
it's like,
I realized that was the case, and I was like, no, go for it. you
yeah,
can
hello.
talk. Yeah.
Thanks for having me back.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much for coming back.
Mhm.
I feel like we hit it off on the last episode, and we were like, yeah, let's do this. We're going to do Men in Black, the whole series, maybe. I don't know. At least up until 3.
I'm willing to go the full distance. That's
Okay. Well, there you go. We're doubling down on it. But yeah, like we do when we've got our cool guests on, we're gonna. This is also something that we promised on the last episode. Normally we just ask, hey, who are your top 5 comic book characters? But you threw it out there. You've got different sections, and we are gonna hear your favorite comic book characters as represented on TV, which I'm truly looking forward to.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I'm excited, and as I've already teased you, I once again went overboard
Yeah,
in
not a
even on
problem.
this. So, it's always when you first mentioned it.
Mhm.
I was like, just like the first time, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be fun. This is going to be easy, no problem. And then when I start working on it, I'm like, God damn it. I got like, this list is getting big. And then I'm like, I got to split the list. I got to do like, there's things. And anyways, yes, I got lots of stuff.
All right, I'm
Yes.
ready to go. Hit us with it.
Okay. So you asked for TV superheroes. So the way that I did this one
Okay.
is, most of it's going to be pretty obvious, but I'm listing the show. So these are all TV-based superhero shows.
Okay.
Mhm.
Got it.
But it's broken into 2 sections. The first section I'm going to ramble through really, really quickly, and this is animated.
Okay.
Nice.
I
Okay.
think that's an important distinction.
It is
Yes,
very
I appreciate
important.
it.
Yes, because obviously the second section is live action.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
animated, and live action is where I was focusing, but it was a whole thing because my number 1 animated series is Batman the Animated Series from 92
Yeah.
because it is the king.
course.
It is
Yeah.
the king.
Yeah.
It's 100%.
It's
right?
so good. So good.
So I had to have that, and that was in my original list, and then I eventually split because I was like, that's because as I'll get to live action, you'll understand why I did this. So I have Batman the Animated Series from 92.
Mhm.
Great. Batman Beyond from 1999, which is an extension of
All
the
right.
animated series, which
Yep.
is also surprisingly good. I was
I
shocked.
rewatched it recently. Well, maybe not that recently, but definitely within the last 5 or 6 years, and I was like, I was really into it.
Mhm.
Yeah, like it is actually like it was. I was like, wow, this is for the concept of it. I was like, this is really intriguing and interesting. A little rough in the beginning, but it really does
It gets
kind of
there.
find its footing. The
Mhm.
shame though is that it eventually, of course, it gets canceled before it can like wrap up its story, as it were, which then leads into my third pick, which is
Mhm.
Justice League from 2001, which then
Mm.
leads into Justice League Unlimited, which wraps up Batman Beyond in 1 episode. So
Yes.
Mm.
they all come together.
It's
There
true.
is a theme here, but don't worry, I don't do this completely. So my fourth show out of 5 is Young Justice. Yes, there's a DC theme.
I'm so
I'm-
glad you brought that up. I love that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Young Justice is like, again, another show that I was thinking, oh, like a Teen Titans, thing, because we had just had Teen Titans Go for a long time.
Mhm.
And so and that was more obviously for a younger audience. And then seeing what Young Justice did, and it was like, oh, this is meant for like that 15 plus kind of like 14, 15 plus kind of teenager kind of vibe. And that's exactly what the show did. And it went a little darker, well, a lot darker, I should say. But yeah, from 2010, that was a great series. Now I'm gonna break ranks, flip over to Marvel,
All
and
right.
go to one of actually my favorite Marvel series, and that's Ultimate Spider-Man from 2012.
Ooh.
Is that the one that's like is that like the Neil Patrick Harris one?
No. This one from 2012. This one I really like. It's more of kind of like a I forget the actual name of it, but like a goofy anime kind of style thing
Okay.
to it. And they do break canon with like who's introduced to who and when. And a lot of the characters
Mhm.
are in high school with Peter here, and like there's a bunch of stuff going on. But he does eventually meet up with like Nick Fury and the Avengers, and that's a whole
Okay,
thing.
I do remember this show then.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, I liked it.
yeah, yeah. It was a lot of fun. I actually, for even with all those changes, I really enjoyed the kind of narrative and the story they were putting together here.
Mm.
So those are my animated. I went through those ones pretty quickly. Okay, live action. So what I did here, unlike my animated, I have chosen. There's only okay. For the most part, they are either going to be shows that didn't get a lot of love,
Okay.
i.e., single seasons,
Mhm.
and then canceled, or um, they are just lesser known shows.
Okay.
And some of them are the combination of the two, and hence why they got cut off. But I'm going to start off with uh, what I would say is my 1A, 1B scenario. So my 1A, though, I'm going to give to 2019's Watchmen from HBO
Great.
because
Yep.
it's just
Mm.
That would have been my one.
it's
Like,
just amazing.
yeah.
It was a show that I had a lot of trepidation, especially coming off Snyder's live action
Mhm.
film, being a big fan of the comic originally, and getting this kind of loose, continuation of the comic slash remix that they do that Lindelof does here. Taking place 34 years after the events of what's in the comic, and then they
Yeah.
continue that on. It all takes place in Tulsa, and like a lot of people, learning some of that history
Mhm.
brand new to me, and watching that first episode, which was a slap in the face, those first like 5-10 minutes,
Oh yeah. You're
and
like, oh, this is just real.
I was like, shit, okay, damn. And then the whole rest of the series and how and then it does veer out of that realism and back into
Mhm.
Watchmen territory near the end. And I had a lot of fun with that show, and I'm happy actually that there was no second season. I'm happy that it was
Yeah,
just
I'm
this
glad
one
they stuck
thing.
to just the one.
Yeah, it was just because it felt better that way. Like the more I
Mhm.
think about it, like I was disappointed that they didn't. But that's the like, I just want
You
more
just want more.
content. I just want
Mhm.
more, right? Especially when
Yeah.
it's good, And Regina King is, oh my
She's
God, she's
amazing in it.
just, like just so awesome. And of course, Jeremy Irons as Ozymandias, like you couldn't ask for a better older
It's
version,
it's true. Like I
Mhm.
remember they said he was in it. I didn't know who he was gonna play, and I was just like, oh yeah, of course, this is
right?
who he's playing.
Yeah, and then I
Yeah.
love Mateen in it because he's just a fantastic actor,
Hmm.
and what they do with his character, I just, for those who might be listening and who haven't watched it, I don't want to ruin part of that
I
storyline.
apprecied you were talking around it, and I was just like,
Yeah,
yeah, he's great.
yeah, and even Don Johnson's character and his storyline, I was just like, okay, this is
It's
all of the things that are going on. There's a lot of things that either build up or take down depending on which way you're looking, and I was like, I had a ton of fun with that show, ton of fun.
They got me with Don Johnson. I was just
Mhm.
like, wait a minute, why is this? And then the show
Right.
continues. I'm like, okay, that's why you cast Don Johnson.
Right. And it made perfect sense. But then there was all, of course, I love the stuff with the Rorschach stuff and the
Hmm.
gangs using the masks.
Mhm.
I love that takedown because especially for a lot of the freakos out there that still don't understand what Watchmen's truly about
Yeah,
or who
Zack
Rorschach
Snyder.
is really is.
Yeah.
Like, anyways, so yeah, that's my 1A because my 1B, and I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with this show. This is a show that I really loved, and it got 5 seasons. This is actually this is the longest show that I
Okay.
have on this list. It got 5 seasons, and it's Misfits, which aired on channel E4 in Britain, and it is a amazingly fantastic show about a bunch of youth offenders who
Mhm.
get
Hmm.
in England. If you're not anybody who's listening might not be familiar with this, youth offenders have a tendency to be put into work release programs where they on the weekends have to go
Hmm.
somewhere and like either clean up or like clean up graffiti, clean up the park, whatever, that kind of idea.
Mhm.
So in this, they're doing that, and they're outside during a unfortunate electrical storm that gives them all superpowers.
It is a great show. I really like it, but I only watched the first two seasons because I think there was like a Christmas special that explained one of the characters. I don't want to
Yes.
spoil. That explained what happened to them in between the second and third season that I could never watch. So I kind of was just like, oh, I'll have to figure that out, and then never got back to it. But I
Mm.
loved what I saw of it.
Yeah, well, and to that effect, to like where you're talking about between the second and third season, there is a big thing that happens in the show in which everybody who has powers in the beginning. Oh, and the other since I said like youth offenders, they're not the most moral of people,
No,
right? And they
it is a really interesting watch.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so that's going on. And then some of them, they have their powers like right away. Some don't develop them till later or find out the extent of their full powers. But what was one of the big tricks in this is about partway through this series, everybody gives up their powers,
Hmm.
hates that they lose their powers, goes to get the powers back, can't because they've been sold to somebody else and now have to get new powers. And it's like a lottery, and then they got all new powers. So it's a whole new power
Very
set for
interesting.
people,
Very interesting.
right? There's one character who's male who later on turns into a female,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
As part of the
Wow.
superpower. There's a multiple man kind of ripoff thing, but each one is a distinct personality that comes in
Mm.
later. There's a lot of really cool things
I
that
should get back to that show.
Mhm.
yeah, and also for anybody who watched Game of Thrones, Ewan
Right.
Riens is one of the big stars in this, and he plays a creepy character, but he's not Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah, it's like a different type of creepy.
Yeah. And but as he moves on, his character grows, and he is 100. That's why I had such a hard time with him as Ramsay Bolton, because I liked him in this show.
Yeah.
And then to see the Ramsay Bolton of it all, and I was just like, oh man, but I knew that he could play jerkface
I
really
saw
well.
it the reverse, so it was easier for me to be
Ah.
like, oh, okay, good. He can do something else.
Yeah. But yeah, he's a fantastic actor. But those are like my 1A, 1Bs because like Watchmen was so just brilliant, and Misfits really liked because it's not DC, Marvel, any of that stuff. And
Yeah,
they're
it
having
feels
more.
original.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what was that movie called? Chronicle.
Yeah.
The one where they're
love
just
that
like
movie.
regular people getting powers and how they would fuck that all up. Right.
Right.
Next show, a show that nobody watched and I was one of them. I'm about like the three people that watched it. I was one. And it's a show from ABC in 2010 called No Ordinary Family.
Oh, I remember actively not watching that.
Right.
So
There you
it's
go.
good.
I like how you're like I've seen Misfits. I didn't watch it all, but I actively did not watch this one.
Is that Michael Chiklis or something?
It is Michael
Yeah,
Chiklis. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this one is also, it's kind of funny because I remember even thinking it at the time. There's an obvious Fantastic Four element to this series, which of course I found kind of a little hokey because he was the Thing in the shitty films. But here he plays the father. There's a mother played by Julie Benz from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Nice.
There's the two of them as the parents, and then there's two children, and they fly. She's on a research trip or whatever, and they fly into the Amazon. The plane crashes, and then they all get superpowers. And
a lot like Fantastic
just a
Four.
lot like
They
Fantastic
just didn't
Four.
go far enough into the
Yeah, it just wasn't space.
Yeah, they did it on a TV budget.
Yes,
and
yeah.
so they crashed the plane. But actually, was the plane actually an accidental crash? Was it crashed on purpose? It's part of the storyline. We
I
learned
feel like
and
that
they
would
have
be interesting, actually.
yeah, and there's actually kind of like not exactly a Doctor Doom element of it, but there is like a supervillain kind of in the background, and there's some other supervillain-ish, but then nobody wears costumes. It's all just like people trying to do things, and like the family's doing superheroic things at times, but trying not to get caught. So kind of like a Smallville kind of angle. How do you do this without not people knowing who you are? And like Chiklis's character plays he's an artist. He's a sketch artist for the police. So he's not
Oh, okay.
he's not a cop, but he's cop adjacent. So he gets to find out about a lot of these criminal activities
That's a
and
good
stuff like
in.
that.
It's kind of like a Dexter in. I like that.
Yeah.
And Julie
then
Benz is from Dexter as well.
Yeah.
yeah, and right, exactly. But Julie Benz plays a scientist in this, which has the connections to their superpowers. And she's researching the powers, and that helps with things as well. And so there's some really cool things going on in there. Next show, another show that nobody watched, and so few people watched it that they didn't actually air all 12 original episodes. They only aired, I believe it was 9 or 10 of them. I can't remember exactly if it was 9 or 10. But the last couple of episodes were aired only digitally, and so nobody got to see them really. And that is Powerless, which was it was on NBC originally, and it was based on DC Comics universe, but none of the real characters. So the closest character is actually one DC character is in this, but it's nobody's ever heard of, and that's Van Wayne.
Yep.
And he's the cousin of Bruce. and in the TV show, and that's legit. That comes from like this the 50s or 60s, whatever it is. Bill Finger created this character, like he's legit from the comics. Very never used. But in the TV show, played by Alan Tudyk, the amazing Alan Tudyk, and he plays him as like this smarmy kind of suck up character who wants to be in the big leagues because he thinks he's in the big leagues and he never can, because they're in this there's this fictional town called Charm City, and he wants to, because they're working for Wayne Security, and he wants to move out of Charm City and get up to Gotham to work with Bruce, but he can never get there because they just keep failing, because what they do at Wayne Security, him and his team, and he's not the star. It's Vanessa Hudgens is the actual star of the show. Did the show have
Danny Pudi in it as well?
It did. Danny Pudi,
then I
Ron
feel like I watched
Funches.
the first 2 episodes, and then, like you said, it kind of stopped airing properly, and it was before me being like, anyone really streaming anything. So it was like,
no, exactly. And it was a shame, because it was a show, like a lot of comedies, especially workplace comedies, starts off really weak or kind of like loose, not knowing what it really is. By the time you get about 5 or 6 episodes in, it kind of starts to find its footing, and it starts to grow. And that's when I was really loving it. Like Ron Funches gets amped up, and Danny Pudi gets pushed up, doing more stuff in every episode, which really helped. But yeah, so they do that. Their whole thing is that at the company at Wayne Securities, their function is to create technology to protect civilians from superheroes and villains fighting in the city. So they wear they invent suits that protect you from falling rubble, and shoes that push you out of the way when when cars are about to hit you, and things like that. When massive battles are going, or personal force fields, they're creating all these kinds of things, and some of it fails, and then it's PR things. It's very workplace comedy, but it's a lot of fun. Nobody watched it though. Like I said, nobody fucking watched that show at all.
I feel like they had to like film the pilot twice or so. I feel like there was something.
They did.
Like where it was like they had to switch up the tone a bit.
Yeah, apparently the original version was way more workplace comedy, like felt more like The Office or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas The Office is a bad example because it doesn't have that kind of like faux documentary thing, but you know what I mean? Like it's very, they wanted to amp up the real physical comedy and also the superheroes in it. But even though there's no superheroes, they do like news broadcasts, and outside in the window there's like debris and lasers and Green Lantern rings being flashed, but you don't see anybody. So that's the thing about that show. Just like Ordinary Family, no superheroes. A couple super villains, but they're like Z-list super villains. Right? Like, and then and most of them don't even exist in the comics. It was just like they were there just as the joke, which was great.
Okay.
Still living in the DC world again, and that is 2019's Pennyworth. This one went for 3 seasons across Epix and HBO.
3 seasons.
It went for 3?
It did.
I thought it had like 2. I mean,
that's
not
shocking
that
to me.
Well, and that's the thing. The 2 seasons aired on Epix, and then the 3rd season on HBO Max, which is why nobody knows about it.
Okay, sure.
Right. So it was all part of the restructuring of DC properties and everything like that. And the launch of HBO Max, and they got, and Epix was canceling it. It was a whole thing. But basically, for anybody who's listening who's not familiar with this, it's based in the 60s. It's Alfred as a young man. He's just come back from the war, his stint in the SAS. And it's all about him. He's kind of down on his luck at first, really kind of just floating around. And he eventually realizes he needs to start working. So he, through some friends, they start a security firm, and then things kind of go wacky from there. And this is how he gets involved with the Waynes originally, who turn out in this series to be CIA agents, sort of. They're not CIA, but they're like CIA adjacent. And then there's again no supervillains. It's more of like the big one is the Raven Society, which is kind of like a Court of Owls
Okay.
supervillain society thing. Not supervillains, but just like a criminal organization. And so it's played more realistically,
Mhm.
which
I would
is
rather
was
that.
nice.
I don't
Yeah,
like
it
when they're
was
like, let's do villains before Batman to like make it seem
right.
like
Like
he's redundant by
Yeah.
the time he gets there.
Mhm.
and that was a complaint by some people. And I'm like, dude, this is like 40 years before Bruce is even like
Hmm.
like becoming Batman. Like, no, you're not going to get Penguin or, like things like that. Like, this is
Mhm.
just, it all takes place in England, and, and it's just a cool vibe. I
I
really
did hear
enjoyed that
people
show.
really liked it. It's just I didn't really. It came out when I was watching so many things that I was
That
like,
would,
this isn't on something that I can have on right in front of me right away. I'm gonna have to seek it out in other ways.
bro, the number of shows that I just like, people are like, oh, you didn't watch that? And it's like, I can't watch everything.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
Mhm.
gotta pick and choose. And lastly, this is more of a famous superhero of a sort. But I'm going to go a little old school classic here, 1966, but not that one.
Uh,
I'm doing the Green Hornet. It's
yeah,
it's
that's
its sister
Oh
show.
yeah.
there. You go.
26 episodes, one season, back when they used to do things like that,
Mhm.
on ABC. Basically, it's based off the original 30s to, roughly 30s to 50s radio serials. They took that idea, turned it into a TV show. This is also for probably about 99.9% of all Americans, the first introduction to Bruce Lee.
Yeah,
Yep.
And famously, of course, is the infamous story of Bruce Lee's doing the action sequence as as Kato in the show, and
Mhm.
then they're telling him to slow down because the cameras can't catch
yeah.
him because he's moving so fast, which is not 100% how it really happened, but yeah, close enough.
Mhm.
It sounds really cool in the legend of Bruce Lee, but yeah, that's a lot of people's first introduction to him. Of course, the character was changed from what he was originally told when he was pitched this idea. Like, it was supposed to be more equal
Yeah,
and
like a
and more
actual
visibility.
partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not the manservant, playing into Asian stereotypes, things
Mhm.
like that, which was unfortunate. But it was a really fun, great show. Of course, also from William Dozier, the guy who did the '66 Batman.
Hmm.
It's in of that ilk. So if if you've seen '66 Batman, it's the same general vibe.
I
And
know.
there's a crossover episode between the two
Yes, there is.
characters,
Yeah, my
which is
parents made
fantastic.
me watch that a lot. I don't think I saw all 26 episodes, but like that was the show they liked when they came to Canada. So
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
yeah, I watched it a lot.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
not allowed to watch that show because my family was like, if you're gonna watch Bruce Lee,
Yeah, I can
here's
see
the
them being like, "Hey, don't
catalog.
watch that."
Yeah, they're gonna be like,
yeah.
no, 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 don't do this. And then because my dad was very much like, here's the agenda they had. And
Mm.
explaining this to a 6 to 8 year old kid was just like, all right, so you're telling me there's better Bruce Lee out there? Why don't I just watch that? That's a better argument. So we had like the
100%.
Chinese dubs and all that kind of stuff. It was great, but then I was not allowed to watch that. But for some reason, my mom and dad were still talking about it in high regard. And that is the thing I don't understand. But whatever.
Well, historically, of course, like the big thing there was that he's still like
He was still there. That
Yes.
was
he
that was the
it's like
thing.
it's like the Uhura thing, right? It's like it's a smaller role. It's not as big as it or even Sulu on Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like in both of those cases, they're smaller roles, but were massive, obviously, for those who had never seen somebody that looks like them on
Mhm.
screen when they all were just white dudes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
That's what the big thing was. But then the argument in my household was like, we've got Hong Kong cinema, we've
Yeah.
got this, and
You can
and
see
that's
the good stuff.
yeah. There's like here's Jackie Chan before Rush Hour, before like whatever this, and it was just like yeah, that was a totally different Jackie Chan.
And he had similar complaints. Again, I mean,
Yes, he
he's
did.
like the whole they're not letting me do it as fast as I need to do it. So
Yeah,
um,
or
there must be
and
something to that, like the frustration of being like, can I just do this naturally instead of breaking it down so you can film it properly?
I remember when Jackie Chan first broke here, like for like with Rumble in the Bronx, for
Mhm.
most North American
Yeah.
audiences, right? Even though, of course, obviously anybody who's in the know, whether they did at that time or subsequently, his actual Hong Kong credits list is gigantic, and some
Huge.
and fantastic films on their own right.
Mhm.
Like Police Story and Police Story 2, like just crazy. But talking about after Rumble in the Bronx, and then him talking in a couple of interviews, he talks about, and I don't remember if it was as part of Rush Hour or if it was part of Shanghai Noon, or it was in that kind of like late 90s to early 2000s time period. But he talked about what you're saying, Daniel, about but it wasn't about the speed. He was complaining about the safety. Because
Yeah.
he's like, I want to do this stunt, and they're like, you can't do the stunt. He's like, but I can do the stunt. And they're like, yeah, but you're the star. And he's like, so what? And they're like,
Yeah, we're not insuring
insurance.
you for that.
And they're like, it was confusing because in Hong Kong, like some of the shit that he did, like that one infamously on the building top where like he almost died, right? Because he's hanging on by a thread, right? Like like Ro has a death wish, and
True.
it's like, and I think back to like going back to Green Hornet with Bruce Lee, is like if he hadn't have died so young, and we had gotten to see him continue on, I like, it's one of those things, it's those big what ifs, like what would have happened in Hollywood had after Enter the Dragon, which was so successful, like what could have happened
Mhm.
for Asian actors, and representation and like storylines, like
Yeah,
who
it's
knows?
just like a
See,
huge
here's
delay on that.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I think his death actually made it more cemented in that
Mhm.
sense, where it's like, yeah, they're here, you can't get rid of them. But then it was also like, yeah, it's only kung fu though, like
Yeah.
that's it. Like they couldn't expand beyond that. For
That- and
sure.
that's-
and
and that's the
arguably,
thing.
it's still
That's
the
the
same
delay
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and that's like, I think about that as like, what, you're right, 100%, because it was even Jackie's stuff when he first came here, it's all kung fu, like that kind of martial arts thing. Same thing with Jet Li. It was all that.
Mhm.
But I think about like what some of the ideas that Bruce had talked about, like when you read about what he was trying to accomplish and he wanted to accomplish, like creating Kung Fu the series, like that was his idea.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
and that would have, if they had done it his way with him, it would have, like, that would have changed television,
Yeah.
which is, it's crazy. But that's so yeah, so that's that. I don't want to drag us out, because I know I did this last time. I started going down deep wells of of things
It's
here.
okay. Yeah, it's
But yeah,
fine.
this is so I gave you classic animated superhero characters, and my live actions, not so, like some of them, obviously Watchmen and Pennyworth and Powerless are quasi connected,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but still off the beaten path, because I didn't just want to do like the Arrows or the Flashes and Agents of Shield
Well, I mean,
and
it's hard to
any
be
of the
like,
Marvel stuff on Disney Plus. Like
it's hard
they're
to
all
be like,
great.
I like Watchmen and Arrow. Like it's hard to put those next to each other.
Yeah.
Right, and plus a lot of this stuff, like everybody see, like Disney Plus and the Netflix shows and things like that, everybody's seen it. I wanted to get, it's like Misfits.
appreciate
A lot of people I know never heard of Misfits, and I'm like, I tried explaining it and they're like, well, that sounds really cool, and I'm like, yeah, like, but
I want to
and
go back and
Powerless,
watch it now. You reminded me.
Powerless, good luck. I took a look, it's not available anywhere.
Yeah. No, that's
have to
that's
buy
the
it.
frustrating thing when you're like, oh, at least you can buy it. Like there's some shows where I'm like, I can't even rent this. Like I can't give you money to watch this thing legally.
Yeah. Green Hornet, you can only way to watch Green Hornet is if it's on television,
Mhm.
or if you buy the box set.
Yeah, if you got the physical media of it, for sure.
Otherwise, you cannot watch it because there's a rights issue
Mhm.
with who owns it and who's, because it's owned by the actual creator of Green Hornet through, like originally.
Right.
And it's
Well,
like,
good for
it's all
him, though.
tied up. Yeah, it's all tied up in knots, even though Fox produced it's a whole thing. But anyways, yeah, those are my TV superhero
Thank you.
character lists. So there you go.
Big fan of the deep cuts.
Yeah.
Big fan.
You made me want to be like, maybe I should go watch Pennyworth, and I definitely want to go back to Misfits.
I will say Pennyworth, to be fair, like actually all of these shows, one of the reasons why a lot of them are so short-lived is because they are a little uneven, like the Powerless, the No Ordinary Family, the Pennyworth, little uneven in the beginning while they're trying to find their feet. The problem is that studios are notoriously gun shy, don't like spending money, and don't let shows grow. Even though No Ordinary Family got 20 episodes, and
It's a lot.
they didn't get to go to the second season. I'm like, come on, man. But that's ABC, right? They were
Yeah.
at the time they were high. Like if you weren't getting
Mhm.
like 20 million people watching your show, get out of here.
Well, guys, it's not a smooth transition, but we should transition to spoiling Men in Black 2. How did you guys feel about it?
Well, I'll just say right off the
Okay.
top, I remembered liking this movie a lot more than I
Interesting.
actually do.
Oh,
Like when I
interesting.
watched it, I was like, I liked this. What was going on there? And I think it was just because I was like a lot of people, just in love with Will Smith at that era. Like there was nothing he could put out that was wrong, that would misfire. And then I'm just like, wait, I'm seeing some of the holes now that I revisit it.
What about you, James?
That's fair. I okay. So first Men in Black, like we talked about last time, you know, I'm a big fan of that movie.
Mhm.
I am a fan of this one. I do like this film. I like the entire franchise.
Mhm.
And I have come at it differently than you, Ben, because it was I watched them originally, liked them, then hated them, all of them.
Okay.
Not hate is hate actually, no, I shouldn't say that. That is absolutely the wrong word. Just had zero regard.
Right.
Like just wasn't something that I would even put on hey, let's just rewatch this, or if it came up on Netflix or on TV, I just like whatever, right?
Mhm.
Like it was just meh, didn't care, right? Rewatching them. So what ended up happening, I think I told you this in the last like when we did
Yeah.
the episode on Men in Black. So when I watched that to get prepared for that episode with you guys, which was great, I got hooked. I had to go back and I watched everything at that point. I
Right.
rewatched everything.
Mhm.
Right. So I watched all 4 films again, back to back, like over the next week. Right. I just couldn't stop myself. So I had to rewatch Men in Black 2 for this episode to kind of, refresh my memory about what was going on. And here's the thing. I'm rewatching it and I'm just like, is it as good? No. Is it fun? 100%.
Mhm.
That's the thing. I look at it and I go, it's still a lot of fun.
Mhm.
There's some things that happen in this film. I'm going to hold off into later into our conversation to talk about something I have an idea about. But there are some things that they lay out here that are so different, right? Because now you're seeing like, Kay is gone, Jay is the man,
Mhm.
which is so weird. It's 5 years later, which is like,
Yeah.
oh, now, like Kay's retired, Jay's up, L's missing because as I subsequently learned, like, because here's the thing with L, and I think we talked a little bit about it in the last one. L is a weird character
Yes.
because Linda Fiorentino, there's a lot of stories about why she's not in this film.
Yeah.
And there is, the one story is that she didn't want to be part of the film. Second story, a producer says that the character was never meant to carry on. It was always just a one-off character. And then the third story is strongly rumored, so I got big air quotes about rumor here, is that Tommy Lee Jones hated working with her.
Oh, now
That's
right?
what I heard too.
So but Tommy Lee Jones is not exactly a party pack. That dude
does not get along with a lot of
he's
people.
a prickly pear if there ever was one.
But
So-
I do know that Linda Fiorentina. It's hard because I feel like you hear, oh, that person's difficult, which Linda did have said about her a bunch of like Kevin Smith said it, and like she wouldn't even talk to Kevin Smith when they were doing Dogma. But then like after Me Too, I was like, wait a minute, like a lot of women were saying that's code for like I wouldn't sleep with somebody, and I'm just like, nah,
That's
now
that's the thing. Is like, is it like at the time I was thinking, oh, okay, she's just hard to work with, whatever, right? And I thought the same thing, but like you said, Me Too happened. You're like, oh, the misogyny that's built into this industry is just like it's crazy. So it's hard to say. That's why I present all three of them because those are the three main ones that I'm aware of. And I think they're important because I don't think we should sit there and just go, oh, it's because of Tommy Lee Jones or it's, oh, because the character wasn't important or she didn't. It's all three of them all three of them are probably the truth.
Yeah, like they meet up at some point, like the Venn diagram overlap.
Yeah,
of them.
because I can see the producer saying what they said about not being an important like a returning character because she didn't want to come back because maybe her and Tommy Lee Jones didn't vibe. that all meshes to create not being there.
Mhm.
So I'm cool with that. Like it is what it is. At the time I thought, why isn't she there?
So did I. Yeah.
Right. And they do that throwaway line of,
I forgot
She
they
wanted-
explained it away. I just
Yeah,
remember
she
being
wanted
like,
to go
what the
back to the
hell?
morgue.
yeah.
But yeah, I was a lot like you, James, in the sense that I actually no, I didn't like it when I first saw it. The second one, I loved the first one, but this time watching it, I was like, I mean, I'm having fun. I think I don't have the anger for it that I did when I saw it the first time. I think this is only the second time I've seen it, and I was just like,
Oh wow,
you know,
okay.
I was just like, yeah, you know what, like. I think there's a couple of lines in there, like there's a certain kind of humor that keep layering in there where I'm like, this is something, like this is pretty interesting humor for this kind of movie, but then it's also mixed with like Rip Torn doing like slapstick karate kicks on somebody, and
Yeah.
and then for some reason Tommy Lee Jones not doing it in a slapstick way, but sort of the same kind of kick later, earlier, and I'm just like, yeah, all of this is whatever, but it is a fun movie, and I enjoyed little pockets here and there of like, oh, this is an interesting way to go, and in general appreciated that it was, as you guys kind of alluded to, like this whole like what happens when Kay is gone, and Jay, who was new to this whole thing, is feeling the loneliness because now he doesn't even have the person who brought him into this thing, and he's completely isolated.
Well, one of the things I learned, I was looking up to some of the history of it, and kind of refreshing my memory about things. And I think there's two important elements outside of the film, like of the film's story. One that directly impacts it, and two impacts the film and its release. And so the first part is that there's a bunch of different writers that get involved, and a lot of studio notes in which they were concerned about Will Smith's love story with Rosario Dawson in this film.
That feels very present in the way that they're like separated
changes
from each other.
Yeah. And one of those was Barry Sonnenfeld when he came on and he saw the script that was written by, I forget which writer it was at the time, that really it had a lot of this romantic comedy stuff in there. And it was like, and he was like, I remember when I worked with Will on Wild Wild West, everybody shit on me for that. Will needs to be the funny guy, he needs to be like doing the zing, and he's too much he's too much K early on.
Right.
So
he is just K in the
he is.
Yeah. But then, so what Sonnenfeld had them push to get them to do is, and the studio as well, was cut all that down. Basically, that was like the first hour of the film, and that basically comes down to like 15 minutes. And they bring, because Kay is not supposed to show up until much later.
Okay.
In the film, like in the original version, one of the original versions of the script, he comes in much later, and I'm like, no, that's the right. In fairness, as truncated as some of this film feels, it is the right call bringing him in earlier, because I like Jay as K, like the grumpy, I'm in charge, I know everything. I like that, and that, I think that's important. But I do think that Will Smith excels at this point in his career. Right, in 2002, he still needs to be. It's like Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop. Right, in Beverly Hills Cop 2 years later, like you can't have him doing like Macbeth, like you just can't, like it's a bridge too far for a lot of people who are expecting
especially within the same franchise. It's just
right, because the first film he's such a young zany guy.
He's great in the first one. This one, I didn't realize how much time had passed in between movies too. Like,
neither did I. I thought it was only like a year. But
it's like, wait,
apparently it's 5.
They actually waited 5 years for this. Interesting. But so there is room for you to be like, yeah, he could have grown up in that time. But you are like, well, this obviously Tommy Lee Jones is going to come back and order will be restored, because you are like, they even have that thing. I didn't even remember Nick Cannon was in this, where like Nick Cannon, they're like they're so clearly
cameos.
like, oh, Jay will just neuralize anyone, like he does not care, like Men in Black can get it, like civilians can get it. And I like that he was like, I made a mistake, sorry, please don't neuralize me. And he's just like, wait, what does that mean? And then
and that was something I actually loved about the characterization, is that he doesn't even know that he's become an asshole.
Yeah.
I
And
do
thought
like that.
that I thought was a nice, like, because that's the thing. We again, of course, like you guys know, when you watch a movie once, you get surface level stuff.
Mhm.
Maybe a level or two down because you're vibing with it that day. But when you watch, like for me, this is probably, I don't know, this is like, unlike you, Daniel, this is probably like my fifth or sixth viewing of the film overall. It's still
Yeah.
not as much as when I think about it, like as much as I enjoy it, so it kind of surprises me. But yeah, there was things I was picking up on where like this character is much cooler
Mhm.
because of he's growing. He's not
Mhm.
just the first film Jay again, which is the
I
other trap that they could
appreciated
have
that.
done.
I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing I appreciate is that they were like, oh, they're not gonna just be like, hey, how can we figure out how to get him to do the same kind of jokes again? He is actively affected by his time in Men in Black.
Mhm.
Yeah, which goes back to Ben's comment, I think, which is great, is that like why some people did not like this movie at that time was because it wasn't that first version.
Yeah.
Like that's what they wanted. The other thing, which is very key, I need to bring this up because I completely forgot. Like I said, this film came out July 2002.
Mhm.
This film finished filming 3 weeks after 9/11.
Yeah.
The
That's rough.
entire film had to be re-edited to remove any visual reference to the Twin Towers. And the entire end of the film took place at the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. That was another thing.
You
I was
could-
like, I
you
can
could very
feel the
see
like
it.
reshoots effects of this.
Mhm.
It didn't bother me like because I don't
No,
think visually
but
the
I-
movie looks that great anyway. But it was very clear, like, oh, they're filming somewhere different here for
Yeah.
Mhm.
for this final scene.
But I think this is also super important to the film's original release,
Yeah.
because coming out less than a year after the events of 9/11,
Mhm.
I think a big part of it's icy reception, not only because of the weirdness of the J character, but I think also like as I remember, I remember that day. I
Mhm.
was on my way into work when it happened, and it like blew my mind. And we're living in Canada, and like,
Right, yeah.
we don't know what it was like in Manhattan. We can only, sort of kind of feel that kind of thing. But like, I know some Americans that, still talk about it like as a fresh wound.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that would be
Right?
because it would have been the
23
first
years
time
later.
that happened in their lifetime, like on that level of like, oh shit, they're attacking us. Like,
Yeah.
It's not like my friend got killed in war, which could happen in any year. It was, oh, they came to us. Like,
Yeah.
I've never
And we
that's
watched
never
it
happened
in
my
color
lifetime.
on every fucking television channel. There wasn't a single channel in which this wasn't being played out.
Mhm.
So the 1 year later, like not even like you're talking like 10 months, 9-10 months later that this movie comes out. I'd have to go back and look, but I wouldn't be shocked if we were to look at all of the comedies that came out in 2002 didn't do necessarily as well as they probably would have if they had released any other year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people weren't ready to laugh yet.
Yeah, it's too soon. Like as a society, too soon to laugh at anything.
That
I
and-
100% agree.
I would imagine older people. Obviously, I didn't catch on to it when I
Mhm.
first saw it, but I would think older people would also be like, "Wait, Will Smith isn't even having fun in this
Mhm.
movie." Like, I think that would affect you too if you were like coming into this like, at least I can laugh with Men in Black, and like the first part of this is like, oh no, I don't want to feel these feelings.
Yeah.
Right. I think that goes back to that, like, to your thing, Ben, about like not liking it when you first watched it.
Mhm.
Is that and again, you obviously are gonna have to speak to this, but like if maybe part of it was that kind of not goofy fun, like this more like growing mature vibe of what the story is trying to do and not necessarily succeeding,
Mhm.
but kind of tries to do.
So I actually liked it a lot when I
Yeah,
first
I was
watched
the
it.
one that
But
didn't like it.
Sorry, you were right.
Yeah.
You were the
Yeah, but like mind you, I was like in high school during this period of time and all
Oh
that
yeah,
kind of
okay.
stuff, right? So I actually liked it a lot, and the reason why I liked it was like, oh man, this Jay's a bummer. When do we get fun back? And so the idea that they were like, okay, we're getting Kate back right away, and Jay's gonna be funny again. I'm like, yeah, this is what this should have been the entire time. This is a
Yeah.
comedy. It's an action comedy. But now rewatching it, it's just like, oh, they all that growth off screen and everything they did and the writing and the L, because the thing with L, I'm like, I could forgive it, like
I
and
still
I'm
haven't
glad that you
forgiven it.
addressed those three potential reasons. But like to me it's just the idea of like, okay, Zed could have said something like, yeah, this is why you don't fall in love with your partners, Jay. We don't have to we and then he keeps going through partners and all that kind of stuff. That would make sense to me, the idea of
Mhm.
him returning to K, right? It's not like Jay and Ella had like the big, like thick on-screen chemistry at the time. It was just like, okay, this is where they're going with it. But to bring it back to this point where the moment K is deneuralized, then Jay just goes back to being how he was in the first movie. Was now as an adult, I'm like, oh yikes. I
I don't
they
think he fully goes back. I think a lot of the
mm,
humor is I'm past where you left me and they never call attention to it, but it's a lot of Will Smith visually reacting to him
yep,
sending shots like Chief, Tiger, and being like, that doesn't fly anymore. But he doesn't
yep.
say
Well,
anything, and I don't think you ever see a regression. It's him being
Oh,
like,
I
or
disagree. I
because he's
there's a
also like,
total.
hey, I drive the car. You used to drive the car, and
yeah.
then he's like, whatever, let's go. But he's not like I'm back into that mode yet.
No, he's not regressing as a person, to your
Mhm.
point, right? But he's regressing as a character comedically because
Yes.
everything in that second half after Kay comes back, to Ben's point, I noticed, really noticed it watching it today,
Mhm.
is that it becomes immediately he can't do anything right.
Yep.
It's pratfall city. He's getting his ass kicked constantly,
Mhm.
very similar to his character in the first film, but he's still like the guy who knows what's going on and he can do better. But I just like that did feel like it feels like the first half of the film we have growth. The
Yep.
second half of the film, it's like a stagnation, if not only a slight regression backwards,
Mhm.
but there's still
Interesting.
some of the growth there.
Because I
You
don't
know,
think he ever is competent in the like you think he is because he's next to stupider people. But I don't think in the second movie he's like I found myself this second time being like kind of annoyed at how long it took him to get rid of Jeff in that first scene. Like I was kind of like, what? He's hitting himself, like he's getting knocked out, he's stabbing himself. So I don't think he progressed as the agent. The progression was always what I was talking about, which is I've been here long enough that you can't sun me anymore. Because
yeah,
I
okay.
never actually saw him being more competent in this second movie in
Well,
terms of
early,
the actual like dealing with it. He can talk, he's doing that, but like even when he's neuralizing people, he's sloppy at it. Like he's like he you can see him being like, oh shit, I got to start again. Like
Mhm.
that the actual agent stuff hasn't progressed in to me in the first part, even before Kay gets back. I
see, 'cause I
think
guess
that it's
I'm
way
I'm
more obvious because Kay is there that you're like, oh, he's not doing well. But it's like he was only doing well in comparison to the shitty partner he had.
see, I was looking at it from the point of view like when he walks through the first time MIB headquarters and he's just like this and do this and do that. Like that was a confident Jay. That was a
Yes.
guy who knew what he was doing, what he was talking about. The Jeff thing doesn't really bother me because they still need to put in some goofy pratfall things. Like
Yes.
even Cade has some goofy pratfalls that he does. Tommy Lee Jones is like the whole thing, like that kick, that stupid bicycle kick thing that he
Yeah.
does on the
Yeah.
Balchinian. Like there's those types of things, right? Like, but of course, Tommy Lee Jones, you know, notorious stone face, like that
Yeah.
dude is built to be a straight man. And I think that's the other thing too, right? Is that like there is a part of me in an alternate universe that wants to see Will Smith and Patrick Warburton as partners for a longer period of time.
Mhm.
Just
I think
because,
you do need to see him with someone else longer than you do. I, yeah, I agree
yeah,
with you. I think it bothered me this time and it bothered me the first time. I'm like, how is this not Elle? I hate I hate that it's not her. We've already covered why
Mhm.
it
mhm.
might not have been her, but it bothers me, especially since it's like he doesn't have any, and I don't mean the characters. I mean, as actors, they don't really have any chemistry either, and so it's not like I don't feel any way when he's like, "Yeah, I got to get rid of you," like to Patrick Warburton. I'm just like,
Mhm.
yeah, I know, I didn't,
Well, yeah,
wasn't
for
enjoying
me,
this,
it's
but
I
I
just
do
love
think we
Patrick
need,
Warburton.
yeah, oh yeah, he's great, and I agree with you that we should see him longer with a different, because when you were saying earlier why I didn't like it, it was actually because I felt like they were doing goofier things in this, because I didn't see the first movie as like um laugh out loud funny. I like, just because of the age I was like, no, this is a cool movie that has Will Smith being funny in it. And
Mm.
this one, I'm like, he's partners with the dog. Oh, like worms get to like be part of this. It was a bunch of stuff where I'm like, yeah, like I feel like they're trying to cater to a younger audience, while this time seeing the adult stuff they were doing. Whereas as a kid, obviously that stuff isn't really landing with me, and I'm just seeing the like, yeah, like I get it. Like it's funnier if he works with a dog, but I don't want that. And then this time I see like what they were actually getting at, so I can appreciate it better.
Mhm. I so and I might be remembering the first one incorrectly, and James, you can help me with this, but before he becomes MIB, wasn't he in the police force and like not able to hold a partner there too? So the idea that he's at the same spot and but he did find a partner that he liked in Kay, and ultimately this movie brings them back together would have been actually pretty good with me. And with what's his face? Warburton. Um I kind of got enough of him in the sense where I'm like, yeah, this guy's incompetent enough. He's doing the regular cop stuff where he's like, hey, I'm just gonna rough you up right away with the Jeff monster that they had. I'm like, no, everything about this tracks about why Jay would be unhappy here without Kay, and getting them back together is good. But like you, James, like I saw immediately that they were trying to make him as incompetent as possible the moment Kay was deneuralized. And there was like this swagger that he had in the beginning that was like cool, cool, cool. But the problem is he's not funny. And I feel like the issue is once Kay went back, you're right. Like the only funny thing that they try to do with Kay is, oh yeah, it's a new upgraded car, and here are the controllers, which is a PlayStation controller painted silver. And it's like, okay, that's the only thing they tried to do funny here, but it didn't work out clearly for Kay's character. So they had to go back to what worked, which is bumbling Jay, which bothered me quite a bit. It really,
Yeah, I
Well,
really
just
because
don't
it
see him
says
as bumbling. Like,
see, yeah, no, I'm with Ben. He totally is bumbling to me.
Mhm.
The moment K gets his memory back, and K is K,
I
because
think it makes sense, um, if we are giving the movie credit for showing him progressing, to have a brief moment of like, okay, like the big dog is back. How do I fit in now? But I don't like, yeah, just it. And I need to watch it again because it didn't. That's not what stuck out to me. What stuck out to me was that in general, he was like not great when it came to doing the actual alien stuff. And it only makes sense to me that, yeah, you would see a difference when K actually comes back instead of him being able to be the K. Because now you've created a situation where he can't perform the way he was in terms of the swagger that you guys noticed at the beginning. But also that speaks to this movie not being as solid as the first one, because I
100%.
Mhm.
Because I think I think the other thing too is that like, and obviously there are societal things you can read into this power dynamic between
Mm-hmm.
K and J,
Mhm.
and how J goes from being super confident, and I think in the hands of a supremely better writer, and the writers are not terrible. Like David Cope was one of the writers at one point. These are not terrible writers. It's just I don't think that the story came together as it could have, or what they
Mhm.
might have envisioned, because I think in a better script, the handling of confident J, you know, and a returning K, and then J not knowing who he is in this new dynamic, could have been played both for laughs, but also like the pathos of like how, like everybody's gone through that, where like you're hanging out with your cool best friend, or your older brother comes back, or your older sister comes home, and it's like
Mhm.
you're not in charge anymore, or like at your job and somebody comes in that used to work there, and all of a sudden like you're no longer the top dog because everybody wants to, like that scene when Kay first walks in, everybody's like, oh, Agent K, Agent K, Agent K, right?
Yeah, no one
Like
wants
that,
to
I
take
think,
his coffee order.
right. And I think in a better writer's hands, or like a better written script, I won't say better writer, but a better written script, that could have played out and we would have had so much more to work with and enjoy
Mhm.
I
in
agree.
that dynamic. And then just simply having Tommy Lee be Tommy Lee as Kay,
Mhm.
and just like back on the horse immediately, like as if nothing happened.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then Jay doing these weird things and like feeling like a goofball, like that whole scene in the pizzeria where he's doing the retracing the pointing and all this stuff, and he's like looking at the key, and I was just like, man,
Yeah,
this
that was
just makes you
painful.
look like a child.
Yeah,
And I
but to
don't
me,
like,
I was like, he's overthinking it because of what's happening. Like it played with what they were driving at, and I agree with you completely that this beat, this theme they're trying to work with, is just not handled properly writing wise.
Mhm.
because I think it's a great idea. It just
Yeah,
it could have been so much better.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I like the analogy that you brought in there, James. The idea of like, okay, like your bigger brother comes back to town, you're no longer top dog. There's hilarity in that juvenility, right? And that,
Oh, yeah,
they
for
could have
sure.
done that with both characters of like, okay, Kay's the way he is because he was top dog for such a long time, and now he's got an equal. Now he's going to be juvenile towards the equal, and then Jay's going to be himself again, juvenile. That could have worked out really, really well in the hands of better writers, but that's not what I saw, and it was just very, very much to me what I saw. And my impression of it was, let's give them what they wanted from the first one again, J and K, but J clearly from a step down role, and K clearly in the big dog role, because Tommy Lee Jones is not gonna try to make you laugh in this kind of situation. And when he did with Batman and Robin, I'm pretty sure he got scarred
See,
so
I disagree
badly.
with that too. I think he is trying to make you laugh. The whole like it is funny how he's a straight man, so he's not the clown, but he is
Right.
straight manning is part of comedy. He is making you laugh. Like when you see him at the mail, like
Oh.
when he's like, "No, I'm the
Such a
mail
great-
marshal." Like that is
Yeah.
funny, and that's all him and his delivery. Like so, he is funny. But yeah, we don't have to belabor this point. I do think that like I agree with both of you that it looks bad, but I also understood what they were getting at, so it didn't feel as sinister or anything like that. Because I don't think the point of the first movie is that Will Smith is the underdog. The point of the first movie is he's so sick and great, and that's why you put in the trailers. The difference between me and you is I make this look good. I think they were my issue with the movie was they were trying to get goofier, and so when you keep it that way, it just looks bad.
Yeah, it's the whole like that they basically hinged it, like you said about the first film. This film they hinge on old busted, new hotness.
Yeah,
Old busted, hotness. And I was
Yeah.
like, I remember that from the trailer. And I'm like,
Yes.
you're again, trailers ruin everything.
they definitely
They really
can.
do.
Because you get sometimes like a lot of times you're either going to get the entire film told to you or you get the best lines, whatever. But all of this, I want to take this opportunity right now to talk about something that I think that because some people are pushing for a new sequel,
Mm-hmm.
specifically with these characters, even after
Yeah.
International. And so I'm not going to talk about International and the good or the
We
bad of
will
that.
one day.
Yes, but and regardless of how anybody may or may not feel about 3, which 3 fixes a lot of what happens in 2.
Yep,
That's what I
Yep.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is a much better written script and much
Mhm.
better realized film, and I think they learned that lesson. And taking 10 years really helped with that.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about it, if they were to make a Men in Black 4
Mhm.
and have it with J and K, and because that's what I would do. I thought about this after I was watching. I was like, you bring K back in Zed's role as the head of MIB New York, right?
Yep.
You have Jay become the legit the new K.
Mhm.
He's the older dude, and I would have him, K, thinking about actually finally retiring because Tommy Lee is like 800 years old, right? Like he's not going to have Jay be moving up into Kay's position and do the first film, which we've seen in other films do this sometimes, where they redo the first film as one of the sequels,
Mhm.
but bring back a lot of the story elements, bring in a new 20-something-year-old actor to work with Smith as the straight man, because at this point in his career, he can play straight man
Hmm.
and audiences will believe it.
Yeah, it's true.
Right, because we're ready for it. It's been 25 years. We're ready for that version of Jay, this K-ified Jay that we saw in 2 that nobody liked.
Yeah.
Did that in this, you could make it work, and I think it would wrap things up and then make it nice and easy to transition to new characters and new
Mhm.
storylines and keep this universe going, because then Tommy Lee's out and Will can now be in charge of headquarters, and you can pay him $45 million to come in and do one movie, for 5 days, like
Mhm.
whatever. Those things would work. I think that would really help, because of what was laid in this film, because of this idea of him potentially becoming K.
Mhm.
And then, of course, what happens in 3 that helps bolster that a lot. I think you would really, a lot of good things could come from some seeds here. Unfortunately, this film does not present all of that in the best way possible.
Mhm.
No, it does not. And yet, I still was like, yeah, this is fun. But it is, for whatever reason, just not operating at the same level as the first one.
No,
No.
I don't think it has the same world building. It's not interested in building out anymore. It's just kind of like, hey, you remember the dog, you remember the worms, you remember all this kind of stuff. They have their own apartment now and all it. So it's not like doing behold this brand new world that we didn't know of yet, which I think the first film does very, very well. This film is more just like, all right, it's a lot smaller and it's more character driven and it just goes against itself in many, many different ways, in my opinion, where it's like all the character growth that Jay did here, let's reverse that. Everything that Kay did here, where he has one really, really interesting line here where they're talking about like what happened with you reunited with your wife. Like that was such a great story. Like there could have been the idea of like, yeah, there was something missing and it was the MIB and all this kind of stuff, right? They chose not to because the film was already serious enough for what was supposed to be a comedy. But there was just a lot that they're like, okay, we made a wrong decision by retiring Kay in the first film. We have to reverse that right away and establish at the end of this film that Kay is not retiring. And that to me was like,
Yeah.
damn, that's how it felt.
I feel like they should have. Um, Obviously, this movie was more concerned with being funny, but I really did think like there should be some beats of Kay resenting being brought back. Like, sure, the guy who doesn't remember anything is like, well, I want to know what I forgot. But I feel like once he's got those memories back, he's like, no, I fucking wanted to retire. I don't want this. Like, I feel like there should have been some work put into that of him being like, why did you like?
I also do agree with that.
Yeah, like why did you do this? And then obviously because of the way the movie, this I don't think is great writing, but at least it's kind of tight in terms of like when he gets his memories, he will know like, yeah, I have to come back because I have to sort out this world-ending thing with Rosario Dawson and move that along. But I feel like he still could have had time to resent being brought back, even though he wanted to be retired.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, like to both of your points, one of the things they could have easily have done is early in the film, get a bit of a payoff with him and his wife, or showing that they're broken up, whatever, something about him before we get to the post office, like unconnected, like not connected to the world as it was, just showing him living his regular life. And and showing, like, to your point, the idea of that he's missing and doesn't know it, that he misses the MIB because he doesn't have his wife anymore because she left him and all that stuff. And then to your point, Daniel, at the end, have it be like, yes, he may resent being back, but he also kind of is like, now do the reverse story where now he's like, oh, this is the thing I was missing.
Yeah, like I don't
have a
had
wife
my
to go
chance
to.
with my girlfriend. I played that out. This is where I should be now.
Yeah, especially because they do so much work to be like, hey, remember the post office that you're at? Everyone here's an alien, so you do belong in this world and all this kind of stuff. You just didn't know it. And the idea of like, okay, him and his wife are broken up now. Where else are you going to go? What? Because if his retirement plan was, I want to be with my wife, and that burned, then yeah, finding out, hey, we welcome you back at the MIB is kind of a great thing for his character, right? It actually makes a lot of sense. So to me, it's weird because there's a lot of good background writing that leads his character to the right spot, but it doesn't really get because I 100% agree, Daniel, and that was one thing I was going to bring up too, was the fact that they should have made it so that the first time they deneuralized him, he would have had that emotional response of "I told you I didn't want to be back here,"
Mhm.
and there should be more resistance, and that would have been better for Jay to be like, "Hey, that whole line with hey, how'd things work out with your wife?" would have paid off very, very differently as opposed to just a punch in the face. To me, anyways, they just made it into a
100%.
slapstick thing.
Yeah, because I was waiting for like them to kind of wrap up that whole thing of like,
Mhm.
obviously Jay has been paying attention. I feel like that's how you could show part of Kay's life before we see him. It was like Jay's like checking in and being like, yeah, he's still messed up about not having his wife, and you see him putting around. But like, just to be like, that's why it didn't work out with your wife, and then he gets a punch. I'm like, so we're not going to resolve that. Like, it's just a thing that happened.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that to your point, like that's a great way of handling that early on is just have him checking in on him,
Yeah, because
because now
doesn't I
he's
feel like he checks in on him in the end of the first movie.
right, and
Yeah,
it's
he
like
just spies on him a little bit, I think.
Yeah,
yeah,
so
but
you could do it
it's
again here.
Yeah.
and because when he says when Zed says to him that you need to bring back the guy the best agent, and he realizes that it's K, and he goes, oh shit, and I'm like, why is it oh shit?
Because
You know what I mean?
in my interpretation of his delivery, there was no, don't bring him back because I'm the guy. When it should have been,
Mhm.
we shouldn't bother him. He wanted out.
And this is where I'm like, if we had done a little bit of K, like normal K, to see where Kevin was
Hmm.
in his marriage or lack thereof, and at the post office, and not not being happy, and some of that stuff, and then like Jay just hoping that or maybe even show of him scene like in 3 where they talk to each other, and you kind of get this vibe of like, oh, that they respect each other
Hmm.
for various reasons, but even when they don't necessarily know if because he's normal, he doesn't have the memories.
Mhm.
So something along that line to help pay that off, then would have made that line hit harder. Then it would have made the wife line hit even better than when
Mhm.
he, like just the payoffs. And I think that's where this overcorrection in this love story angle and a few other things, I think that's where because they were rushing to get this out, because it's only what is it, 2 years, I think, after the original film. This one was
Isn't the
released.
original 97 and this is 2002?
Is it 97?
I think the original's 97.
Jesus, man, I am losing my
It's,
brain.
I
Let me double
mean,
check.
we haven't even talked about the Rosario Dawson stuff. Like, I feel like we'll get, but for some reason, my memory was that she was somehow Tommy Lee Jones's daughter, and the movie does
They
might
address
as
it.
well
When he's
have
like, "Wait,
been.
did you
Yeah,
ever?"
it is
fuck
97. So
him?"
you're right. It
Yeah.
has been 5 years, but
Yeah.
it still feels rushed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. The movie feels rushed. There's no doubt about it.
Because I
And
remember
that's why
they
it was so
announced it like
surprising that it's a
almost right away.
5 year gap. That you're like, in my memory, I was like, yeah, this probably happens 2 years after the what 5 years?
Mhm.
I see. I completely forgot that it was actually 5 years, both in real time and in
Mhm.
movie time. But
Mhm.
yeah, like to your Rosario Dawson thing, like they do hint at one point that he's potentially her father, right? And it's
Yeah.
like,
But then they
okay,
cast wrong for that. But I mean, I guess that's just a TV reenactment, but they didn't really show a woman of
no,
color.
they do
as
show it's Linda Kim plays her in
Oh,
real
okay.
life when he has
Mhm.
his memory.
Right,
So
that
you've
is
got
his
it.
memory. But I
You've
was just
got
like,
it.
but she's not Latina or
No,
black.
she's Asian.
Yeah.
So it's an Asian woman, a white
Mhm.
dude, and we get a woman of Puerto Rican descent.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm just like, what?
That
Love
doesn't
it.
make it's sure,
I feel like the movie was like, no, that's not my kid, but I love her mom, so I will treat her like that. I
which
think
which
that's what
is
the movie
fair,
lands on.
Which is fine. That would
Yeah.
have worked. That would have been
but
okay.
they shouldn't even have delved into like a hint
Yeah,
of
because
that.
my memory was obviously like, oh yeah, like this is the one where Kay has an alien daughter, and then the movie plays. I'm like, oh, I guess it's not his daughter. Interesting.
But again, that goes back to like where I think Hollywood sometimes steps on its own dick when they think, oh, we need to have this comedy or this love story or this
Mhm.
sex scene or like like going
Checking the
into
boxes kind of thing yeah, very reminiscent of this era for
yeah, and
sure.
it's just like, come on, man. It was like it didn't work in the 80s,
Hmm.
right? Like 80s into the 90s. That like as the 90s were horrible for box checking back then.
Yes.
It was brutal. Like the 80s were bad, but the 90s turned it on, like trying to turn it on its head, and then they really started checking boxes. And then yeah, anyways, it just I think that would like Rosario Dawson, otherwise I liked her character. I thought she was fun. I thought she was a good addition. She's way more engaging than Fiorentino is as Elle in the first film.
Yep.
To me personally,
I think she meets this movie where she needs to, but I guess I just
the
preferred
Twister
Elle
scene
in.
is awesome.
Yeah,
They
like
just
that's where you're like,
her
oh, she's having a good time.
her openness, which when you find out that she's an alien or half alien or well, whatever, full alien, a half alien, whatever she is, right? Because they never land on the truth of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But her being open to this world, I'm like, okay. I part of me actually wishes that they had neuralized her and she just couldn't. But then again, that would be going back to Elle, and then you're kind of, you know, you're rehashing things there. So it's
Yeah.
like I was like, how are you going to get around it? But then it's like, so Kay's beating Jay up about not neuralizing her, and I'm like, man, there's story beats that just like I get why you did this, but then it does like you're ruining it over here.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I would agree.
I do feel like there was originally the idea of Laura being written as Kay's daughter, but then the idea of someone must have been like, wait, hold on. Do we really want to bring up like a human and alien kind of romantic relationship subtext within this, but also the idea of, hold on, if Kay's idea was retiring to get back to his original love 35 years later, which is like just a naive thing. It's like it's been 35 years. Why would you think that that's still the same person? Like, of
Yeah.
course that didn't work out. But the idea of like, okay, so you're telling me that Kay is looking to return there, but had another relationship while during this 35-year time where he fathered a child that he didn't take care of. It's just like, oh, this is just 90s problematic all over it with like and all that kind of stuff, even though like there's a ton of other really problematic things in this whole movie itself. But it's just I think they wrote themselves into the corner of like, well, we still got to have Laura here. But it definitely feels like she was supposed to be his daughter at some point. It really does have that vibe to it.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
you just reminded me that Barry did Wild Wild West too, because I was like, this is another movie where they're like baiting you with, oh, Will Smith will have a love interest, but not really. Like I remember being like, oh yeah, and obviously Will Smith gets with Selma Hayek in Wild Wild West before I saw the movie, and I saw the movie like she's someone's wife and has no actual interest in him, and that's not even really attention in the movie. And then this movie is like, yeah, they like each other, but she's got to go, and they don't ever have any demonstrable thing. You can feel the tension there, and but it's like, what? So is it like Barry just doesn't want Will to have like love interest in his movies or something? Like, what's going on here? I found that a weird veering, because it's like, at least show me them indulging in the relationship so that it feels worse when they have to separate. Because the way it stands, I'm just like, yeah, you gotta go. Who cares? You guys never did anything together. Just go. You gotta save the world.
See, I don't mind that they don't get to get like it's clear that there's
The longing of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. It's terribly done because I like me personally, I would have much preferred if they had kept it just more as friends, right? And he just really liked her, and that's
Should have
fine.
been younger. I feel like it would be if she was younger, then it would
like go like the sister vibe, like
yeah, like she. I got to take care of this girl. I don't want to neuralize a kid or something like that. And in addition to him already having in his head that everyone thinks I neuralize everybody, which I don't think they properly grasped onto, but could have been another motivation. Like I think that would help, because then it would be an easier thing of like still being like, we're connected, we don't want to leave each other, but not like feeling like, well, they just didn't want to show them getting together, because it does feel like that. Like it feels like the movie was cut so that they never actually get together, but clearly something was supposed to be there.
So
I the one thing I will say, and I'm on two minds about this, because on one hand, I think it could have worked out better story wise, but at the other hand, obviously this is too much of a trope for Hollywood, which is, you know, it turns out that, you know, she's somehow related to him, like as a cousin, or, you know, if she was if she was younger, that she was a sister or something, you know, like, and that's why, you know, for whatever reason he doesn't do it, and then he finds out, you know, and that's the whole connection thing. That would have been fine. That would have maybe worked as well. But again, like I said, it kind of gets a little too tropey, and we've
Right.
seen that happen. And it does, you know, but the rest of this film doesn't bear out that the writing would have been better that way.
right.
Exactly. It
That's
wouldn't
the
necessarily make it a better movie. I just feel like I would feel like it was less tampered with if they
Yeah.
went that way.
Because
Yeah.
as far as I can tell, the only reason why there was like, oh, I'm not actually going to neuralize her was because she's the only one that gives him any kind of empathy. And it's just like before he does it the first time, he's like, oh, that must be really, really sad. Boom, empathy. He's like, oh, wait, hold on. I can't do this. But I would have loved for her to be like, okay, well, she reminds me of my sister who I can't see anymore
that was
because I'm an
something
MIB
would,
agent, right?
yeah,
It
that
could have
would have
been
been
anything.
great.
Yeah.
Or she reminds me of my mom, or she reminds me
Mhm.
of, you know, the love of my life when I was in high school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something that would have triggered it, but we didn't get that. That would have been, and that's something they could have put into this story that wouldn't have affected anything else.
Mm-hmm.
That would have helped explain it. But again, I think this is where, like, going back to what I mentioned earlier, was this the warring factions of the scripts, the different versions of the script. And
Yeah.
and this is a Hollywood problem, as we are aware of.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have like a more dramatic script, a more comedic script, a more, you know, romance script, and then they say, hey, we like these three elements individually. Let's make one movie that has all of those things, and then they all suck.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of making something like, I look at like a perfect example in comparison to this, I think is, at least for me, is Guardians of the Galaxy, which
Mhm.
is a sci-fi comedy
Mhm.
with a love story underlining everything, plus the familial things and all that stuff. And
Mhm.
there's some deep drama in there. We see it done well there, and it's just like, it could have happened here.
Yeah,
I
and I
agree.
think that's what you kind of touched on early on, which is we know James Gunn. Those movies are personal for him. Where I don't know how personal this is to anybody involved.
No,
No, I
That's-
feel like this
so
is
the
still
writing
very much
is kind of like, yeah, whatever, like we'll do this.
Yeah,
Whereas James Gunn is actively trying to process some of his past behavior and
Mhm.
like interrogate certain behaviors he's done. This movie is kind of like, yeah, we're doing a second one. What can we throw in there?
Yeah, it feels like this is the era of movie of like, okay, how can we put a product placement in here, but also sell toys from this and have that be the driving factor versus in the James Gunn stuff because the toys very much still is a thing, but not as big of a driving factor, given that there's so many different ways to monetize from a merchandising standpoint after the fact in this, right? But there's room for that. There's the defensiveness of there's so much here that could have lent to that faction because you're absolutely right. When I see Star-Lord and I see Jay in this, I'm like, yeah, you could very much replace them as the same characters and have those kind of things going on where he's isolated and just childish and all this kind of stuff, never really grew up properly, and to find a family but lose it right away is just tragic for him. So I can see all those things, but this, and I'm very glad that you brought up that the era that this was released in, like the post 9/11 era, that it really made things very, very, very tricky because this was very much, it felt like to me, a movie written by committee. And to your point, like what version of the script is going to test best with audiences? And
Yeah.
they had to change a whole lot, I feel.
no,
Feels like
absolutely.
it, yeah.
And of course we haven't even hit on this either, because sort of hit on it, but loosely. The number of cameos in this film is
Mhm.
insane.
Yes.
David Cross, Michael Jackson, Nick Cannon, Biz Markie, Peter Graves, like Martha Stewart.
Mhm.
Like, there's so many.
You said Michael Jackson, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, David Cross doesn't feel like a cameo because he was in the first one, so it's like, oh, like we're checking back in with this guy.
Yeah.
Was
But-
he in the first one?
Yeah, he's he's trying to swat the bugs, and then the goop falls on him. So he's in the morgue in the first movie,
Mhm.
and then I guess he left the morgue and started this video thing because
I did not
he is
remember
the same
that. Yeah.
he is the same character in both movies.
Okay, because I was wondering,
that's
like, is
that's
he
the bit
canon?
is that he's been telling his coworker who's from the Mighty Ducks movies, hey, like I'm pretty sure there's a thing called the Men in Black, and like they do this thing, and that's why Jay at the end has a big and there's no Men in Black, and you never saw anything. Goodbye.
I totally forgot that or missed it or whatever. I was thinking he was a new character. So, okay, so forget David Cross, but still Michael
there's a
Jackson.
lot.
Nick,
It's
it's insane, and
it
it's
felt like
all
they put work
in,
into that, like
it's
to be like, hey,
all
how can we
in-
get these people in?
Yeah, and all of it. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say they were all inside of headquarters because Biz Markie was at the post office, and
But
Peter
it's all
Graves is
like,
on the videotape.
hey,
but
look at these aliens. Like every well, not yeah, most of them I'm pretty sure like you can cameo if you're an alien, if it turns out you're an alien.
And I don't hate the cameos. I just like Nick Cannon's actually his cameo is the least offensive to me.
Well, because he's not a known quantity then, and it probably should have been him that the movie was sent. Not that character, but as you said, like I guess you're thinking of the next sequel. If you had,
Yes,
obviously Nick Cannon's too old now, but that
but
type
no, but
of
in this
actor who's,
film
like, on
that
the
actually
cusp,
would have worked. Yeah,
if he was like if he was the Rosario Dawson, then you don't have to worry. I guess they were scared about love interest or whatever. Then it can just be the deep connection that has to break up. Or in your version of the fourth or the fourth Will Smith
it would be
movie,
the fourth.
you could have a Nick Cannon type character be like the fresh new blood or something. But yeah, he is kind of just there, and you're like, oh, I guess we know Nick Cannon now, but this must be like Will Smith being like, hey, let me give one of these young people a shot in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Nick was pretty big early 2000s. Like he was,
I guess
he was
not
blowing up
to me in Canada, but for Americans, he would have been big because that would have been like all that. Was he even in all that? I can't remember. He was Nickelodeon though. Like he was part of
He
it.
was blowing up on Nickelodeon. He was starting to get into his movies around that era as well. He was part of that young, like the typical every generation young hot group. He was a big part of that. So for the youngs, which technically which is why I know who he was, because I knew that he was around, although I was still older, but like I knew that he was there. So like I picked up on it, right? Like but some of the other, like I was like, it's too much. It felt too shoehorned, like the Michael Jackson thing. Like I just was like,
I think that was because they cut him from the first movie, so like they had to put him in here, like not contractually, just to be like, hey, like who wants Michael Jackson mad at them?
fair. Still, I just like this is the thing, like everybody making it like I don't mind when you say, oh, this guy is an alien. Obviously, it's got to be this guy's got to be okay, fine. I don't mind like one-off joke lines, but like, do we need to bring everybody in the goddamn movie? Like it's just too much in my world. I think that's also this film again suffering from too many cooks in the kitchen.
I agree.
Like that one, there's that one exec going, hey, we got a young guy. Yep. Click. We've got Biz Markie for the olds. Check. We've got Martha Stewart for the moms. Check. We've got Michael Jackson. Check.
The Biz Markie did feel like, hey, Will, do you want to beatbox? And then because I felt like that was part of the trailers too. And then watching it this time, I was like, it doesn't even feel that impressive. Like I think even the first time I saw it, I was like, yeah, okay. And this time I was like, I feel like I've seen both of them do better elsewhere. Like
100%.
This feels phoned in.
For sure. It for sure feels phoned in, but it's still fun to have that little moment and, and everything. But I was just like, and I didn't find it offensive when I was watching
because
it.
Like, I think it's narrative, not maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but I think the Biz Markie one in particular is like, it is a character moment because it's like Jay is showing you like, you think you're not like a part of this, but look at who you work with and I can prove it. Here we go. Like, let me show you. And so it's part of Kay's realization that at the very least he needs to find out more and follow Jay.
Mhm.
Versus
And
I
a
don't know what the
great
purpose of the Martha Stewart one is, and I don't know
no,
why they kept bringing Michael Jackson back. Like the
yeah,
first time you're
that's
like, okay, for me at least, I was like, oh right, because he wanted to be in the first movie. But like then they keep bringing him back. I'm like, I don't need more of
yeah.
this. Like it's the
Yeah.
same note.
But that Biz Markie moment is also great for Tommy Lee Jones because he has his one great like not he has it's only one, but it's like the first great K straight man of when he looks around Will's head to look
Yeah.
at what's going on, and I was
Yeah.
like, and he just like completely stone faced, like what? I'm like, all right, you giggle, you can't help but giggle because he's
Mhm.
just because you could
Yeah, I
I could
think
just
that was part
imagine
of the like
Kevin.
funny stuff they were doing. That's not like, oh, this is a real knee slapper. It was just like, oh, they're trying to find little bits of like quirky
Mhm.
humor as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just like the mail sorter, like
Yes.
that was a quirky little gag. I was fine with that.
And that his
Uh,
reaction isn't holy shit, look what's going on. It's no smoking. Like that is also part of the humor of that. He's not gonna let go of him being like a guy by the rules. Like
Mhm.
which comes out when he gets his memory back and he still has to keep quoting the rules. But it's like it yeah, I like that humor of like visually it's hilarious to see him do that and then get told no smoking, but then when he's like he's not looking anymore and go back to smoking. But even yeah, Tommy Lee Jones just saying like no smoking. I don't care if you're an alien. Stop smoking.
Mhm.
yeah. Well, to your point, actually, that brings up a great. You kind of made me think about something. Is like when he came back, when he got his memory back. If quoting the rules like he did, it would have been great if they really illustrated that was his coping mechanism for being
Yes.
brought back into the world because that's the one thing that he can control.
Mhm.
So I'm going to quote the rules, and this is what we do. And like that was a missed opportunity. I think that they could
I
have
something tells me a writer was like, "This is what is going to happen," and then it just they
got lost. Yeah.
yeah, like I feel like yeah, because I can see it felt like that to me anyway when I was
Or
watching,
there's
but I don't think that
scenes,
it's properly
lines and
executed.
scenes that are on the cutting room floor that they couldn't put in for time or whatever.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
could
Right,
be
because this isn't even an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's a short
I,
runtime.
like it's like 88 minutes, and I'm pretty sure like if you see it in certain countries, part of that runtime is the music video for Nod Your Heads. Like not here, but in other. So it's like it's not that long of a movie.
no. And which goes back to like you could have put 12 minutes into this film
Yeah.
to and not ruin the flow.
Yeah, it would help a lot if they added some stuff back that I'm assuming was cut, or just on the day we're like, hey, you know what? We need to add some more stuff here.
You know what? And going back to the 9/11 thing, I wouldn't be shocked if we found out that, there's probably about 5 or 6 minutes of the film that was cut because they just
Can't get
couldn't
it. Yeah.
make it work without because the way the shot was composed, that it was just would have cost
Yeah.
way too much money back then to do it. And I get that. So that's fine. But like, yeah, like going back 12 minutes, we could have had of Tommy Lee's normal life that could have, or 6 minutes of that
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
to
well-
help tell the story.
As you said, there's a version where he comes in much later, and they rightfully brought him in But the final movie, you're like, he's first billed. I know he shares a title card with Will Smith, but it's still Tommy Lee Jones, then Will Smith. And I'm like, there's a lot of movies for him not to be in it. And I think even if they're not paired up, we probably could have better used our time showing Kay, maybe having second thoughts about his life as the postmaster.
Mhm.
Yeah. You know what? And I to be honest, I think even in the third film, I think they screw with it and make
Because it's Josh Brolin mostly.
yeah, and they still
Mhm.
have Tommy Lee Jones as top billed, I think.
Maybe that's just contractual then. Maybe
Yeah.
that was always going to be the case, whether or not he came in early or not.
Yeah, it does seem like a contract thing for sure.
Well, he's still it's funny, yeah, because in the first film for sure he's the bigger name,
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
right?
he's-
And
yeah.
and he's got tons of lines and all that stuff. But by the time we get to the second film, it
Will
is
Smith
very
is the-
clear Will is
He's
you
the
know,
bigger star for sure.
well
For
because
sure.
Will has ID4, which came out the same year as
Yep.
the first film, and that blew him up. And by this point, for sure, Will should have contractually come first,
Mhm.
Yeah.
based on star power, the way Hollywood normally works.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just there's so many things, and then of course the song, like just
Yeah, which I always thought was in the first movie, but I was like, oh, I guess it's in the second movie. Okay.
No, the
I
first soundtrack is
remember
better for me.
I remember this song blowing up huge, and I
Yeah.
just like, and I by the time the film came out, I hated it.
It's so funny because I keep forgetting that when you get a Will Smith song, like he's going to rap about the actual movie. Like,
Yeah.
I was listening. I'm like, oh, he's legitimately talking about Laura Flynn Boyle right now and how
Yeah.
annoying she is. Like, it's not just hey, we got Will Smith. It's like no, he's going to rap about the movie.
Hmm.
Oh
I guess
no,
we haven't even talked about the villain or
we
the Johnny
didn't.
Knoxville.
But just to correct myself, Smith is top billed on MIB3.
Oh, okay.
Good.
That
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
but
tracks. Yeah.
it's Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones, and then Josh Brolin. Even though Josh
Mm.
Brolin has more lines.
Yeah, but
For screen time.
if I'm the Men in Black people, I'm like, we're not splitting Will
Yeah,
and,
no, for
Tommy
sure.
Lee Jones. We
Yeah.
want people to remember why they're coming back here.
Yeah, it's
no,
true.
for sure. But yeah, no, Lara Flynn Boyle, she was okay.
I heard she was a last minute or Red. I didn't hear anything. No one talked.
Yeah,
to me
it was
about
supposed to be
anything.
Famke Janssen.
Yeah, Famke Janssen.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah, she was originally cast, but she
But I-
went out for personal reasons,
Mhm.
and then they
Yeah, I
brought
think
in
she had a
Lara
death
Flynn
in the
Boyle.
family, like a good reason to be like, I'm not doing your goofy little movie.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Like obviously that you're gonna you
Um,
gotta handle your business.
but I don't know because she's not. I can't think of a time I've ever been like, oh, that was a funny Famke Janssen thing. Like, I feel like you get her because of the whole underwear model beginning, whereas I'm not saying Laura Flynn Boyle's a comedic genius, but I have seen her do comedic things, so she seems to fit here a bit better.
Well, she did Twin Peaks, and Twin Peaks, no matter what anybody says,
is a comedy.
part comedy,
Mhm.
and that works. Like that
Mhm.
weird oddball comedy styling.
Yeah.
Although ironically enough, there were one of the aliens in the post office was from Twin Peaks as well.
Mhm.
The tall man. But yeah, but did she blow me away? No, she's
No.
not. She's not.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say
D'Onofrio.
she's great. I'm just saying it's interesting she's the second choice because I feel like obviously I haven't seen Famke Janssen even dressed up as her, but I was just like, this just fits. Like it just made sense to me that she would be based on how popular she was, at least in my household at the time, and my awareness of how funny she could be in a villainous role. It was just like, yeah, this just makes more sense than Famke Janssen.
Mhm.
Yeah, but of course, in the world at that time, Famke Janssen definitely the bigger star.
Because of
Mhm.
X-Men, yeah.
Yeah, and like it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways, but again, that'd be like, what would that film have turned out like? And the thing about Lara Flynn Boyle, not her performance, but because of her character and Johnny Knoxville, the special effects for both of them, not good.
Yeah.
Oh,
They
well,
do
I feel
not- they do
movie
not
didn't
hold
have
up.
great special effects.
They do not, especially like Rick Baker's, who did most of the aliens, like as practical aliens. I had no problem with any of that stuff. All of the CG in this film,
Yeah, it's
trash.
good.
Awful. It's awful.
I was so happy when they had like a title card being like, "Don't forget, there's still Rick Baker creations in this movie, so you can't
Mhm.
shit on it completely."
Right. And it's like, because like you look at the worm guys who are both physical and CGI, the CGI for them is less offensive
Mm-hmm.
because
I
they're
would
only in
agree.
the parts of the film, but most of the time they're physical.
Yes.
But Lara Flynn Boyle's like finger, vine snake things, whatever they want to call them,
Mhm.
those looked awful every time we saw them. Knoxville's secondary, Zaphod Beeblebrock's head popping up looked, you could see the line around it where it was.
Apparently, that's from the cartoon, not the character, but just that was like world building from the cartoon they brought into the movie that you can have something like that. Which
That's
I
fair.
was like, oh, I guess I should have watched the cartoon because to me, I was just like, that doesn't mean anything to me. But at least someone would be happy, I guess, if they saw that.
Well, in that feel, and Johnny Knoxville himself, the character feels like that's service for the kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he's just a dumb, goofy henchman character. And same thing with the I'm totally blanking on that villain's name, but the one that Smith fights at the end,
Who
that breaks up into the four little
Yeah,
flying
who
saucery
is
thing.
that? Like, not the actor, but was he in earlier in the movie and I just missed it?
Nope.
It's just out of nowhere.
He's been
like, "Give
he's
me-"
in prison for 5
Okay.
years.
He's like, give
So
me
some-
Jay, and then everything's fine. I'm like, did I miss something where Jay
Mhm.
did something to this guy?
Yeah, you're supposed to just accept sometime between after the first film and that moment that he gets broken out by Lara Flynn's character, somewhere in that time period, Jay screws him over and puts him in jail
Yeah.
at the headquarters. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, like surely this should have been the Jeff Worm thing, like of just getting retribution from earlier in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You could have done, okay, let's rewrite the beginning of the film. You could have easily come in and done the 5-year gap of him checking in on Kay the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
and along the way introduce that character, Jay, capturing, like showing Jay become the man.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You have that progression. You see Tommy progressively, his life falling apart and then getting worse and all these things. And then when Zed says, you got to bring Kay back, and he goes, holy shit, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Because he's become the man, but his life is shit. And you're going to upend it. And, there's going to be a bunch of like that. That would have been more.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked that so much better than the Jeff thing. Anyways, but that's not the way the world worked.
No,
So
yeah, that is better. There's no doubt about it. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I just remember like watching the movie and be like, did I just fall asleep for a bit? Who is this guy, and why would he care about Jay even a little bit, or to this extent where this is payment? James, what would you give Men in Black 2?
So what's the score? Or the
Out
scale?
of 10.
Out of 10?
10.
Yeah.
Ooh. I don't remember what I rated Men in Black on the last
It's
episode.
all good. This is all about how you feel in the moment.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to think. I would say I would have ranked it higher. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna give this like a 5.5
Oh,
because
wow. All right.
like, yeah, I think a 5.5, maybe a low 6, just because there is some problems. I still, don't get me wrong, I will watch this any day,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
but as we've already argued, I found that there is a lot of flaws that I think could have made this film like a 7 or an 8 easily, just by
Definitely.
some quick changes, and that would have really bumped it up. But yeah, I think I'd go somewhere. No, I'm gonna go 6. I'll go a solid 6.
Well, I'm right there with you. I'm at a maybe not a solid 6, but it's a 6. It's a shaky 6.
See, I'm the bummer. I'm the 5. I'm the
Well,
5. Like,
I think that makes sense based on your first comment.
yeah, and here's the thing. I will still watch this because it's entertaining and I love nostalgia, and this does give me nostalgia. I'm like, okay, I'm just not gonna think too hard about this, but it's a fun movie at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
that's what I like. And because like I've been talking to someone in my life, she's like, you don't pick good movies. I'm like, no, I pick entertaining movies.
Sometimes that's what you need. Like,
Exactly.
I have my own scoring system that I do for our show, like at the end of the
Mhm.
year for our rating system. It's not super complicated, but it is complicated for Andrew's taste. But I rate acting, directing, writing, rewatchability, and I have what I call a wild card, which is just like I can just give that a movie a 5 on that alone.
Okay.
I rate everything at a 5. I do math, and I have a whole thing that helps me
I
figure things
respect
out.
that.
And so like, but I group acting, directing, and writing as more valuable than my rewatchability and my wild card,
Mhm.
because those are easier to define when you
Mhm.
watch something, right?
Mhm.
Like those are concrete, even though it's still opinion, obviously.
Yeah. But
Right.
no, I understand. I see the method there. This is gonna feel weird, but this probably will come out in the fall. We're banking episodes right now
Okay, fair enough.
so like probably October-ish it'll come out. But yeah, if anything you want to promote your social media, your podcasts, anything, now would be a great time.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, 'cause once again, I've derailed your entire show. This is what I do. I meander. But my other show, which has a time limit, so we cannot meander that much. Geek Hard show. Geek Hard airs every Friday at 7 p.m. So regardless of when you listen to this show, we'll have new episodes.
Mhm.
We do a couple interviews, a movie review or a TV review, whatever that is. We have our website, geekhardshow.com. And apparently, and I'll tease it here, apparently me and my wife are going to get into miniature building. So eventually on my social
Ooh.
medias, we're going to be showing photos of some of that stuff that we're going to be building,
That's
because
exciting.
Nice.
We just recently got into Best in Miniature on CBC Gem,
Okay.
and we've been really watching the shit out of that. And so now we want to do some building, and we got some like big ideas. So eventually,
Nice.
if it works, I'll have photos to show, and I'm fingers crossed.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm just going to assume it's happening. I'm putting it out there. I'm assuming it's going to happen, and I'm looking forward to it.
Because I've been wanting to get back into it. I used to do D&D and Warhammer 40K miniatures, like painting, not so much playing. Like I play D&D, but not Warhammer so much. I just like painting the miniatures. And so we're going to go from like, obviously like the 164, 172 scale type style miniatures. We're going to be doing like 112 scale. So
Nice.
yeah, I'm going to be doing some bigger things, and like dollhouse scale, as I like to call it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you might see some of the Star Wars stuff that's behind me that might even make it into a room at some point.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah, or a version of that, because our first project is to build an apartment building with different rooms from the apartment building.
Sick.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing like a media room den thing.
That's awesome.
So I plan to make photos. So that'll be on my personal socials, which are usually so that'd be Instagram and stuff. So that would be Mr. JG Green.
There we go.
That's where you would find me on those things there. But yeah, Geek Art Show on any of the major social media platforms. Check us out. You'll hear us every week, and we've always got stuff going on. By the time this episode airs, we'll have just wrapped up our TIFF coverage, which will be an insane few weeks of stuff going on there. Probably even into October, still doing some interviews, because we'll have a bunch of stuff banked up. I know last year, I think our last TIFF interview aired this year about 2 months ago.
Okay. So there'll definitely be stuff coming out after this episode.
Well, because some of the stuff has to be, even though you do it, then you have to time it for their actual releases. So it's kind of weird, but and we do have an awesome interview coming up in the future, but it can't be released until the fall sometime, I think.
Okay.
But that's going to be for those listening, tune in to Geek Art Show, because we're going to have an Elijah Wood interview coming up.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Nice.
I mean, you guys always have sick interviews, so yeah, but Elijah Wood's a great catch.
Yeah, it's about the film Bookworm that's going to be coming out, which is also, I think, his best performance personally.
Good to know.
Yeah, so you guys could check all that out. And again, I want to say to both of you guys, Ben, Daniel, thank you for having me back on to meander, talk about Men in Black, and meander about my comic book loves, my television loves, my music loves, and just talking.
Yeah, I love having you on, and I won't speak for Ben. I'm just assuming he does too.
No, you can absolutely. Right, I love having you on. It's good vibes with you always.
I was so happy we were able to make this happen. And I will end the way we always end. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to hear our episodes, we're on major podcast platforms, but you can also go to tdfelverything.com/spoiledrotten. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at tdfspoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. So you've got options. You can get in touch with us and share the word with all your friends. Thank you very much, James. I love having you on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.